Tonight, we dive into a cyber operation that Western intelligence officials are calling nothing short of historic, possibly the boldest digital intrusion ever witnessed among nuclear armed nations. Ukraine has successfully infiltrated Russian nuclear command systems, not just peripheral networks or administrative files, but the very infrastructure responsible for nuclear control. What Ukrainian cyber units achieved this week broke a barrier that experts around the world believed to be insurmountable. Russia's nuclear networks were considered the most secure digital systems on the planet, practically untouchable, yet Ukraine penetrated them. And Vladimir Putin's reaction? Unlike his usual composed demeanor, the moment he learned of the breach, his expression shifted dramatically. Kremlin cameras, capturing what should have been a standard security briefing, recorded an unprecedented display: genuine, visible shock, something Western analysts noted he could not mask. For the first time, the world saw him caught off guard. Tonight, we'll break down exactly what Ukraine accessed, how they carried out this cyber feat, and what Putin's reaction reveals about the state of Russia's security apparatus. Picture the scene: a Wednesday morning in the Kremlin's fortified briefing room. Vladimir Putin sits at the head of a polished conference table, receiving his daily intelligence update. The room is swept for bugs with meticulous precision every hour, and the environment is tightly controlled. Among those present are Sergei Narishkin, Director of Foreign Intelligence, responsible for external threats, and Alexander Bortnikov, head of the FSB, Russia's domestic security service. The briefing begins under normal circumstances, yet the atmosphere is tense. Every detail matters. The Ukrainian cyber operation has created ripples that even the most seasoned officials cannot ignore. Putin's reaction, captured frame by frame and analyzed extensively by Western intelligence, offers a rare glimpse into the vulnerability of a system long thought impervious. This is more than a breach, it's a revelation. Tonight we explore the depth of Ukraine's cyber incursion, the sophisticated methods behind it, and the implications for global security as one of the world's most secretive nuclear programs shows cracks under unprecedented digital pressure. Inside the Kremlin, the moment Putin learns of the breach. Present in the room are the men entrusted with safeguarding Russia's most critical secrets: the SBZ security director, overseeing domestic intelligence, Valery Gerasimov, chief of the general staff, directing military operations, and other top generals. These are the officials who have always assured Putin that the nuclear command systems were unbreakable. They never imagined the day would come when this briefing would no longer be routine. Putin sits for what is meant to be a standard update, a session designed to inform, reassure, and project an image of normalcy. The generals deliver their usual reports, each detail measured and precise. Then Bortnikov speaks. He does not mention a mere probe or an attempted intrusion. He reports a full-scale penetration. Ukrainian hackers have infiltrated Russia's nuclear command networks. For the first time in decades, Putin, the man who has mastered the art of controlling his expression, reacts before he can suppress it. His eyes widen, his jaw tightens, his hand jerks involuntarily toward the edge of the table. For a fleeting instant, the carefully constructed mask disappears entirely. Everyone present sees what Putin has hidden from the world throughout his career: genuine fear. Consider the gravity of this moment. For months, whispers had circulated, not from official channels, not through public statements, but through informal networks, that Ukraine's cyber capabilities were growing far beyond what anyone expected. Ukraine's cyber strategy has been bold yet measured, patient in its approach. Their operations followed a rhythm, a recognizable pattern, a doctrine of escalating cyber capability. What triggered alarm in Moscow this month was the sudden disruption of that pattern. Cybersecurity experts familiar with digital warfare understand the signs. Preliminary probes mapping network architecture, test intrusions identifying vulnerabilities, periods of quiet as footholds are secured, and the eerie silence preceding major strikes. Over the past year, these markers had been present, allowing analysts to anticipate Ukrainian movements. But now that rhythm vanished. The silence was no longer a prelude. It was the moment of full-scale action. The implications are profound. Ukraine had not just pushed boundaries, they had shattered assumptions about the inviolability of Russia's nuclear command. And Putin, usually a model of controlled composure, could no longer hide the reality. The Kremlin's most sensitive systems had been breached. In cyber operations, silence after extensive preparation is rarely accidental. When sophisticated hackers go quiet, it almost always signals that the mission has begun. This week, the security framework that shielded Russian nuclear systems for decades, protected by isolation, proprietary software, and physical inaccessibility, was suddenly penetrated. Let me be very precise about what unfolded and why intelligence agencies worldwide immediately recognized it as a historic moment in cyber warfare. Ukrainian cyber forces executed a highly coordinated digital operation, employing cutting-edge intrusion tools, zero-day exploits, and insider intelligence. Their goal: to map the Russian nuclear command infrastructure, showcase their access capabilities, and send a clear, unmistakable signal to Moscow. The operation successfully reached communication networks connecting nuclear command to strategic forces. It accessed database systems containing deployment protocols and codes, monitored infrastructure tracking the status of nuclear assets, and even backup systems intended to operate in wartime scenarios. Kirill Budanov, head of Ukrainian military intelligence, normally extremely discreet, released a carefully worded statement. He confirmed that Ukraine had achieved substantial access to Russia's strategic systems. He emphasized that the operation demonstrated capability, not hostile intent, and that the intelligence gathered was being shared with allied nations. The message to Moscow was clear: understand the implications. When Russian officials publicly denied any breach, Ukrainian intelligence responded by releasing technical details that only someone with internal access could have. Essentially, they were showing Moscow exactly what could be seen, and the Russian leadership understood the message immediately. NATO cyber officials verified the intrusion through independent monitoring. Within hours, classified briefings were distributed to the White House, European capitals, and nuclear security commands worldwide. The assessment was urgent and unanimous. The breach was real, unprecedented, and profoundly significant. Ukraine has now demonstrated access to Russian nuclear command systems at a level that experts once considered impossible. The strategic consequences are staggering. A senior Pentagon official, speaking on background, described this as the most significant cyber penetration of a nuclear power in history, proving that even the most secure, untouchable systems can be breached. Consider that for a moment. Western intelligence observed Putin during this briefing in real time. Despite Kremlin controls, his reaction, visible on camera, revealed the gravity of the breach. Every subtle shift in expression told analysts just how catastrophic this compromise truly is. Putin's entire nuclear strategy relied on the belief that his command systems were inviolable. For decades, Russian confidence rested on three pillars: isolation of nuclear networks, requirement of physical access, and reliance on legacy systems thought to be unhackable. That assumption has now been shattered. The Kremlin is acutely aware of the new reality. Ukrainian hackers have penetrated systems once considered invisible. Western allies likely have access to the same intelligence, and every single premise behind Russia's nuclear command must now be re-evaluated. Most strikingly, the so-called impenetrable fortress has been proven anything but. When a nuclear power realizes its most secure infrastructure is compromised, strategic calculations change entirely. That is when masks slip and faces reveal genuine fear. This week, Moscow's response was not calm denial, measured clarification, or confident dismissal. It was raw, visible panic. Officials scrambled, describing Ukraine's claims as impossible fabrications, dangerous provocations, and, most revealingly, as requiring immediate, comprehensive security reviews. But denial only works when you can disprove the evidence. Russia cannot. In fact, the Kremlin's response this week ranks among the most chaotic displays seen since the start of the war. Here's what is known so far. Within 48 hours of Ukraine publicly disclosing the breach, Moscow scrambled into emergency mode. Nuclear command communications were taken temporarily offline. Security personnel across strategic sites were recalled, and emergency protocol reviews were ordered at every level. State media received strict directives to avoid covering the story. These were not routine adjustments. They were panic-driven responses, actions Russia only takes when the very foundations of security have been seriously undermined. Intelligence reports confirmed that internal Kremlin communications reflected genuine alarm. Russia acted before fully understanding the scope of the compromise. Systems were shut down, personnel were recalled, investigations were launched. In essence, Ukraine's disclosure forced Moscow to publicly confirm that something significant had occurred. This is why Putin's visible reaction was so remarkable. The breach wasn't theoretical, it was operational. It represented real access capable of compromising Russian nuclear command if exploited. Not hypothetically, not conceptually, but in practice. Moscow did not project confidence. It did not maintain composure. It revealed fear, showing the world vulnerabilities long assumed impossible. The implications go even deeper. Intelligence analysts now believe Ukraine's cyber operation was designed less to inflict damage and more to demonstrate capability. A calculated psychological maneuver. Ukraine intended for Russia to know they had access, for Putin to understand his systems were compromised, and for the world to see that Russian nuclear infrastructure is not untouchable. By all measures, they succeeded. Putin's visible reaction proves the message landed. The psychological impact on him personally is perhaps the most significant aspect of the operation. Putin built his global influence and power projection on the perceived inviolability of Russian nuclear forces. This week's revelation directly shatters that assumption. Putin cannot openly acknowledge the breach without confirming Russian vulnerability. Yet he also cannot conceal his reaction. His expression spoke to the world. He is trapped between admitting the penetration and pretending nothing happened, while everyone knows the truth. This psychological bind, coupled with ongoing military setbacks and unwavering Western unity, is eroding the carefully crafted image Putin has maintained for decades. Defense analysts describe his visible shock during the briefing as unprecedented, a rare glimpse of genuine vulnerability in the Kremlin's most secretive leader. Defense analysts note that even Putin himself seemed to believe Russian nuclear systems were untouchable, completely impenetrable. Yet this week Ukraine proved otherwise. They accessed What Russia had long claimed was completely off limits, and Putin's expression revealed to the world that he was unprepared for this reality. The confirmed access to Russia's nuclear command has far-reaching global implications. First, it undermines Russia's nuclear credibility. Every threat now carries an implicit uncertainty. Second, it serves as a warning to other nuclear powers that even their most secure systems could be vulnerable, triggering a wave of international security reassessments. Third, it highlights Ukraine's cyber capabilities, which now exceed all prior expectations, forcing allies to rethink strategic calculations. Fourth, the breach sends unmistakable signals to countries like China, North Korea, and Iran, showing that digital vulnerabilities exist even in the most tightly guarded systems. Fifth, it will inevitably compel Russia to restructure its nuclear command, diverting resources and attention away from conventional military operations. To fully grasp the gravity of this moment, it helps to consider historical parallels. One striking example is the Stuxnet operation against Iran's nuclear program. American and Israeli cyber forces penetrated what Iran believed were air-gapped, completely secure centrifuge controls. The physical damage was significant, but the psychological impact, realizing their most secure systems were compromised, was even greater. Another relevant parallel occurred in 1980, when the Soviets discovered that American intelligence had tapped undersea communication cables they assumed were entirely secure. The realization of impossible access forced a complete restructuring of Soviet communications. Russia is now facing a similar reckoning. Systems that were designed around assumptions of invulnerability have proven anything but secure. While the outward collapse of Russian command may not yet be visible, Putin's reaction gives us a rare glimpse. The internal collapse has already begun. What makes this situation particularly perilous is its timing. This cyber penetration occurred while Putin is under immense pressure, both militarily and politically, compounding the risk and significance of this unprecedented breach. Military commanders are pressing for resources to sustain conventional operations. Security services are demanding answers about how the breach happened. Political advisors are focused on damage control. And at the center of it all, Putin is grappling with blame, responsibility, and the stark reality that his ultimate deterrent, Russia's nuclear arsenal, may have been compromised. When leaders face strategic shocks of this magnitude, they rarely respond with strength. Instead, they react from fear, from desperation. And that fear is visible, shaping both global strategy and the potential for miscalculation. The strategic consequences of this breach are profound, carrying both opportunities and risks. On one hand, the opportunity lies in the erosion of Russian nuclear credibility. Ukraine has proven that these systems are not untouchable,